Hey everybody, welcome again to a LiveU Fireside Chat from NAB 2022. My name is George Klippel, the Director of Channel Sales for LiveU, and I am very excited to bring you another session today. We're talking about remote production with a good friend of LiveU, Troy Witt. Troy Witt is with Take One Productions, and I'm so happy that you're here. Thanks for joining us, Troy.
Thanks, George. Always fun to come to NAB.
Yeah, no, it is fun to come to NAB, and first one in a couple of years,
right?
Oh my gosh,
it's
yeah,
so
right? Crazy.
It's just not the same with virtual. You can't, walk in the show floor and seeing the stuff that catches your eye that you're like, oh, there's a solution. I didn't know I had a problem I needed to solve. But yeah, and then talking to the vendors is so much easier in person. So I'm really glad that we have this opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And, remote production has been taking off, and we call it REMI. And, you've been using LiveU for quite a while, and we'll get to that in a little bit. And we're going to talk about some case studies and stuff. But before we do, why don't we hear a little bit about your background, a little bit about who Troy Witt is, and a little bit about Take One Productions. Why don't we just start there?
Thanks. Yeah, no, Take One Productions, TakeOneDigital.com is my company. I actually started out of my bedroom as a kid, believe it or not. Video goes back that far, and I like to tell people, how there was those AV geeks in junior high? You don't have to grow out of that. So kids, if you're watching at home, and you love the AV club or you love doing the TV news channel in high school, stick with it. You can make a career out of that and have a great time doing it. And really what my passion is solving those problems for our customers using my tools in broadcast and live production. And so my company, Take One Productions, has been doing live video on the web since the early 2000s when that was really rough. I mean, this was, we were like streaming at a whole 400, 500K in Windows Media Video back then, right?
And that was amazing quality, 400,
right. Oh, we were like,
500K.
At 360 by 240, we thought we were something special. But, we could broadcast. And that's really been my passion, and the passion of my team is to broadcast and to help our clients get their message out. Whether their message is internally for corporate communications or externally for a brand launch, a product launch, a new attraction at a theme park, the auto shows, we cover all those clients from some of the biggest names. And we joke that we're the biggest name you've never heard of because in most of our contracts we have confidentiality clauses. So our name appears nowhere on the stream. But we're the guys making that stream happen. And these are some of the biggest names that, are out there in consumer products or theme parks or auto. And we have to perform at 100%. And what's really interesting is my background comes from broadcast. And in broadcast, you actually have a tolerance for failure, right? If that remote doesn't work, well, the news desk is going to cut to something else and then maybe come back. In a corporate show, if your show doesn't work and 30,000 fans are watching, the corporate overlords freak out, right? And they have no tolerance for that. So we look at best practices. We look at belt and suspenders for everything that we can. And it's been really fun because we get to move quickly, break things, pivot. And even in the last 2 years, right, everybody was like, uh-oh, all the live shows just went away. And my team pivoted quickly, and we made virtual production happen, like on a flip of a switch. And so our clients were coming into us remote, and we're going to get into talk about that because, right, in California, we were some of the first to lock down. And actually, we had some clients in Europe that were locked down even before us. And we were helping them with video on the web immediately. And the crazy thing is, to back up real quick, is, I said I've been doing video on the web since, the early 2000s. And I had to sell our clients about video on the web since then. Like, look, you need to webcast your thing, right? There's somebody at that sales meeting that cannot make it. There is a reason to live webcast this. And, I was always convincing people. And then 2 years ago, all of a sudden, everybody just beat a path to my door, and I had to convince nobody of video on the web.
No, exactly. And I think that was the pandemic really changed the whole scene about streaming and video on the web and communicating externally and internally,
right?
From at home and from different ways. And, it was funny. It became this phenomenon that, people who had never, ever thought about doing it in the past just started doing it all over and constantly. So let's dive into some of the things that you brought with you today and talk about some of your case studies and remote production workflows, because to me, one of the things, everybody was used to Zoom and Teams and other types of technology, but more and more we found during the pandemic, people came to LiveU in particular because they wanted much higher quality and reliability and stability with their feeds. They realized that, hey, those other tools were okay and they were fine for some applications, but at the highest levels and with some of those clients that you're not able to mention names of, they wanted that quality and reliability, and they demanded of it when they started doing those productions. So let's dive into some of these that you were working on and tell us about them. So.
Yeah, and remote production, I don't want to take any wind out of the LiveU sales, out of the LiveU, sales, not S-A-I-L-S, not S-A-L-E-S, wind out of that too. But, remote production encompasses anything that's not happening on site. So there's a lot of ways to do that. One of the ways, we did this show, this is a really interesting case study. We did this show that, this was the easy part. We had a studio in Tel Aviv that was going to feed us in Orange County, California. And immediately when I heard that their studio was in Tel Aviv, and I went, click, isn't LiveU originally based in Israel? So I sent an email to the studio and I said, do you guys have LiveU? And they're like, yeah. And I said, great, okay, so you're going to feed our LiveU 2000 over to us. And that was no problem. That was super easy. But what the client wanted, and this is a screenshot of the what we call the main general session of this show. But what this client had is they had 25 breakout sessions that had to happen simultaneously that were playback, that would all run simultaneously up to the cloud, up to 25 different streams, to 25 different players all at once. And the way that everybody else looked at doing this and talk about remote production, everybody else looked at this as standard normal production, and they wanted to grab 25 playback pros and 25 encoders and a huge pipe out of their office and stream that. And I was like, wait a minute, we can play back in the cloud to all those 25 RTMP endpoints. Now, our CDN allowed us to purchase 25 playbacks of 4 gigabytes apiece and put all those playbacks in and put them all on remotely. And so we actually started with the breakouts, and then we went to the main session. And we were able to do that cost effectively for this client by using remote production and save them 75% versus our competitors by using cloud production, So it was like a no-brainer. And of course we tested it. We had to make sure it was all robust and all good like that. But when I talk about robustness in the cloud, I think that a lot of people don't understand that a data center has more backup for power and for internet than any one of our offices do, any one of our company headquarters probably do, So this one came in and out of our TriCaster, but the cloud production came from there. Another example that I have for you too is we have a lot of productions that need captioning now. And for ADA compliance or for multi-language translation, they use captioning. And here we show that we had one show that was going out in English. They also wanted English. They wanted 4 streams going out. We have English mainstream, no captions, English captioned, Mandarin captioned, and French captioned. I don't need all those captioners, all those translators. At this point, this was during pandemic when nobody was moving around, So those captioners all did their work from home. And they remoted into us in Orange County. We put everything together using LiveU, bonded it, and kicked it back out. So remote production can happen a lot of different ways of not bringing your captioners on site, not bringing every person on site.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest points about doing a remote or REMI production is you're having the ability to take not just the LiveU pieces in, but any piece in now, You can have your graphics operator working from another location and feeding in the graphics. You can have, the translator people coming in remotely, and everybody can work in this new type of mentality or workflow that we've developed, right? I mean, it's
right.
really wonderful.
And then they can be more productive too, right? Because they can finish your show, go on
Start
to another show.
Exactly.
And you're not buying them for the whole day, because in LA, you do a 1 hour event, and there goes your day with traffic to and from. I mean, you can't do anything else. So if there's remote possibility, this show actually is interesting because we were able to LiveU, and we'll talk about why I got into the LiveU environment. But with LiveU, we had a remote person in North Carolina that needed to come into a show in Irvine, and then the show was switched in Irvine and fed back out as a webcast. And again, without travel, by using LiveU, we were able to find a LiveU stringer in North Carolina, because LiveU's got an install base of people all around the world with LiveU units. And so we found a local stringer who was like, yeah, I can go over to XYZ office and do that shoot and feed us that signal using LiveU Central, bring it to our LiveU 2000 that we pulled on site to switch it into the show live. And then we use the LiveU Solo to kick the signal back out. So we use like everything, I think, in the LiveU. We didn't have air control just yet, but we used everything from LiveU for that one show.
Yeah, it's funny. Aside from the cool socks that you have that say "Go Solo" there, those are very cool. I have to say
that was a few years back.
That's
I think,
right.
at NAB.
That was a few years back at NAB. But I think when you take a look at the production and you're bringing in all these different elements, and now we introduced Cloud Connect here at NAB, and then having this was an on-prem type thing that you just talked about, but now having Cloud Connect where you can do SRT out, NDI out, RTMP out. I think that also changes some of the dynamics of the workflow that you can be doing in the future. But before you go on to the next one, I do want to ask you that question about LiveU, because you started off with the Pro line of products, and then you also moved into, I guess, adding multiple solo units. So you've kind of gone through the whole gamut of the product portfolio at LiveU. What was it, when you were transitioning and building your business and coming up, what was it that really kind of made you jump into LiveU, if you will, and decide to go into the bonded cellular world, right? Because I taught you. I know I taught you. And we had numerous conversations.
You know the answer to.
In some respects, but what got you there?
So this is a funny story, right? And you know it. But for a long time, we'd been streaming before LiveU was around and known to us. And we had multiple shows simply fail, because the Ethernet internet failed on site. And it could be a simple failure, such as we'd be at a corporate office, we'd be streaming along just fine, and then somebody up in marketing needed to upload that social media video. This was before social media, but okay, so they uploaded some video, and that choked off the bandwidth. And our encoder simply couldn't now feed its 5 megabit stream up, because the bandwidth available was 1 meg or 1000K, right? And so the stream would stop, and all of a sudden, the viewers would start sending in comments, and the client would flip out. Or we were doing a show from a hotel nearby, and somebody in IT just decided to repatch the switch. And again, we went off the air. And I thought, like, every time, I'm losing huge dollars when a show goes dark. Like in a corporate world, you lose the show. Like, you just comp the show. And so I was like, there's got to be a better way. And I started looking around, and I found out, like, oh my gosh, these guys have found a better way, and it's bonded cellular. So we're going to bond together every connection we can get, whether it's Wi-Fi, hardline, multiple cells. Okay, this is great. And I went out to the market, and I saw that there was LiveU and there was a competitor. And I then hooked up with George and the competitor, and I was like, head to head, guys, cage match, duke it out. Whoever wins my business. And I'm small potatoes. I'm not some like CNN that's going to buy like a whole slew of stuff. And George came right out like, let's get you a demo unit. Let's have you side by side us. And we side by sided you guys, and it was no competition. But then there was a number of other little things that put us over the edge. Look, if you guys have an installed base around the world that now with the Pro line, I can go out and be a stringer that can feed anywhere too. I can also take in a feed from anybody if I'm in the LiveU environment. That's huge for us. We can rent a unit if we need, because the base is out there that we can get an extra couple units, like, you guys go to, I don't know, the Olympics and, the inauguration and stuff like that, and have extra units that you rent to the broadcasters. And I was like, this is huge. And so we jumped in full force with LiveU, never looking back. And I mean, I remember, grilling you on like, I don't know, I got to ROI this. This is kind of pricey. And like now, literally, once we moved into the solo units for our regular, everyday, just streams from a switcher. Look, at the beginning of those, I was like, oh, I don't know, adding all the data plans and, having to pay for cellular data for all these. Look, now when we're broadcasting during COVID, we have redundant power for everything. I have 3 legs of internet for every show I do. I have our AT&T fiber, I have our cable copper, and I have Verizon wireless, at least on every stream, every show.
And I think that's something really important to point out. I mean, regardless of technology, when you're a production company and you're doing jobs like you're doing, redundancy and backup and fail-safe is huge. You've got to have that. If you don't, I think you're just looking for trouble.
You're
right?
asking for it, and It's not a matter of if; it's a matter of when. And and now I remember when I started with the LiveU the first time. I was like, well, client, if you want to add on the cell bonding thing, I'll charge you X number of dollars more. And it just turned into, I sleep better at night before a show if I know my show is cell bonded. I built it into my pricing structure. I pay for it as a cost of doing business because it's the right thing to do, and it's on every one of my shows. And I'm convinced that's why we have the business that we do now, is because we don't have those failures.
Yeah, that is a great story. Now, you have a couple of unique case studies, too, that you've done. I mean, in some of your day-to-day productions, you've gone outside of just the normal corporate fare or AV fare that you would describe. So what's this one about here that you got coming up?
Well, surgical video is actually like a big thing. Those who haven't gotten into medical video, I actually was pre-med in college and broadcast journalism. And my mom jokes that she's like, you're going to find a way to put those things together. And sure enough, me and my team are in the operating room a number of times a year. And in the old days, the other ways of doing this that other people do is literally they drive a satellite truck up to the hospital. And that's a huge deal, right? Because the ORs are usually in the basement, and a satellite truck obviously is up on the street. But we're able to cell bond, and sometimes we can't put the encoder in the basement. And what I like to tell other LiveU users, I'm like, just remember, the encoder doesn't have to be in the OR, okay? Like, the encoder can be up in a fire escape, and you can be still down in the basement. But this one was interesting, and it actually, so we do a show once a year with a company that does live surgery from 5 ORs simultaneously, feeding them all back to a ballroom here in Vegas in front of other eye doctors. They're all watching, and they all have IFB back to the surgeons, and they're all talking back and forth simultaneously between 5 live surgeries happening at once. And my team does all the remotes for that, and it's really cool because the surgeons have the IFB in their ear while they're operating.
And this is for training?
This is for industry training.
Industry training,
You know, so they're all using different products, different tools, and they're doing it rapid fire live. And you can see that our setup is actually on the corner there on the left side of the screen on one surgical cart. I mean, it's that small. And we're taking a feed from a camera, the PTZ camera you see, but we also take a video takeoff from the operating microscope. That's what you see on the big monitor is the OR microscope. So we take a feed from that and we feed the 2 feeds back. And we do it times 5. So we got 5 different operators in the field all doing that. Another one that we do fairly routinely, and you can see, our setup here with the TriCaster with the LiveU sitting right on the desk. The big thing that I said about broadcast having an install base of LiveU is when Fox News calls my client and says, hey, we want this feed of this event you're doing, I have a LiveU 200 on site already. All I need is Fox News to just bond in my serial number into their LiveU Central, and boom, we're feeding Fox News. They don't need to send a truck. I don't need to go out and get a fiber line. I don't need to, no. It's just like, it's like magic. And we've had multiple clients that need to feed other TV stations around the country. And like, how cool is that? Like, my little production company, like, we're feeding, like, not only to the web and to the interested viewers, but we're going to a TV station too.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. All of the major broadcast networks have our encoders, decoders rather, in their offices and their studios and all that, and having that ability to offer not just corporate clients but any client, I mean, that really makes a world of difference. So
it really does.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
And even if I don't make a lot of money on that, the ability to do that for them and not have to have a satellite truck come out or have something special that needs to be set up, right? That looks huge to our clients.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. Let me ask you this. Oh, you've got another slide here. Go ahead and tell me.
Again, this is the same switcher. We're at this is at the Richard Nixon Library in Yorba Linda, and you can see we've got our LiveU right in the corner there. We've got Secretary of State Mike Pompeo there, and they're having a roundtable. And again, we can bring in, we can push out, and really too, part of the cell bonding on this one, you see we've got a little Verizon dongle right there on the corner of it, is they had some bandwidth challenges there with their hardline internet. Right. And so, if you can bond in cellular on that, you can solve a lot of that challenge, even if it has to fail over or really bond in for just to handle a little bit of bandwidth choking.
Yeah, and again, I think that goes back to your beginning statement about what it is that you can do as a production company to solve people's problems, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, one of the things I wanted to ask you too is what is it advice, I guess, would you give to other people, other production companies in particular that that are thinking about getting into bonded cellular, using LiveU for the first time, have never done it before? What do you tell somebody like that who's thinking about doing it? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, no, I think with bonded cellular, the best advice that I'd have is if you don't know a lot about that, let LiveU handle it for you. Get your modems, get your data, get everything from LiveU so that LiveU has it all set up when they ship it to you. Because some people that I've seen that get into it on a bolt-on basis on their own that are like, oh, I'll bring my own modems, I'll bring my own hockey pucks. There's a few other little tricks to that LiveU handles to make it all work together, to make it one beautiful little ecosystem. And so you guys handle that, and if you don't know all that back end of the data buckets and prioritization of data on those wireless networks, then let LiveU handle that for you. But it's really, for us, been a huge plus. And we always now take out AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, plus whatever we can get from terrestrial when we're on site.
Yeah, no, that's great. And, we've got a few more minutes left, and I want to make sure we get a chance to ask the audience if they have any questions. And before I do, though, is there anything else you wanted to add that I didn't ask?
I don't think so.
Yeah, no, it's phenomenal talking to you. Yeah, and so from the audience, if you have any questions, Steve in particular, because you were here first. He's been here the whole time. If you have a question, raise your hand, and we'll repeat it for the audience that's watching live. Anybody have any questions that you want to ask? Raise your hand. You can. Do you have a question? Go ahead. Yeah, please. Repeat the question.
Yeah, so the question was about not having RTMPs for all the breakout sessions for the one that we were doing, the 25. No. We had RTMP for each one of those breakout sessions that we were going to on our CDN. But what we didn't have to do was encode those and do the playback, let's say on a Playback Pro or on a playback machine, one at a time, at a time, at a time. I mean, can you imagine having 25 playback machines, 25 encoders? And if each one's going at 5 meg, you better have a 150 meg connection. Good luck with that. That's like stable as all get out, right? So in remote production, use a cloud server to do those playouts. And you can schedule all of those for to play back at exactly the same time, so they all go, right? They all needed still, our CDN had 25 different players. But our CDN would be like, I don't know what they handle in an average hour, probably 5,000 players. So we were a drop in the bucket for them. But to spin that kind of thing up in the cloud versus doing that on site, right? I mean, like, you could go to a large rental house and rent 25 playback machines and 25 encoders. It would cost you an arm and a leg. And I'm sure that that's how our competition quoted that job, because we came in, I heard, 75% less than them. And that made the client go like, wait, like, how are you guys doing this? We didn't tell them all the tricks. I told it to you guys. Let's keep that in the business, okay? But yeah, no, you still needed 25 RTMP endpoints.
If you can go to the next slide, I think it'll have our keep going
all the way to the end. Graduation. We got that season coming up.
Go to the next one. There you go.
Hey,
I want to make
Q&A,
sure you get your tagline in there. But
yeah.
I think, too, just to add to that, just to be clear, because if you're feeding from a LiveU, we have an on-prem server, we have a cloud server that can do RTMP out to a CDN like Facebook or YouTube or Bright Cove or anywhere that you want to send it as well. But in this case, it was a very, very particular use case, too. And then I think even Troy could probably take a minute offline to even tell you a little bit more than that. But in any case, you can use RTMP to just go to a single destination or even multi-destinations as well. Any other questions in the audience? Raise your hand. We'll take another question. Anybody? We did have one that came in online I wanted to run by you because it was pretty interesting, that said, working with many types of clients, what are the main differences between corporate and broadcast customers? Can you take this one?
Right. Yeah, the corporate and broadcast customer is very different, right? The broadcast customer is very concerned about time, right? You got to be on time. The corporate customer, like when they say noon, they mean 12:05, 12:10, right? The standard, like somebody up on a podium. But I have to educate our corporate customer on that. Look, if someone's watching on the web, it's like broadcast time. When you tell them noon, they're there at noon. They're there at 12:01, okay? Be ready for that. But broadcast customers, as I said before, they understand that, sometimes there's a little glitch. If you're like, you've seen the motorcycle camera on the Tour de France or something, and you can watch the camera as he goes between cell towers or something with a different technology, not LiveU, you watch it break up a little bit maybe, right? And like nobody bats an eye at it. My corporate clients, that happens, and someone's over at me like, hey, did you see that breakup? And you're like, yeah, like no big deal. Like it happens all the time. And they're like, they lose it over that kind of stuff. So the corporate client, and what's interesting too is there's actually, I found, and I started in broadcast, I hate to say it, like, I make more money in corporate than I would make in broadcast, because those corporate clients, they want everything belt and suspenders. They are going to do this once and maybe never again, right? This is the big rollout to them. And so you better be on it, and there's a premium for that. And the big corporate client is a really great client if you can land it, because they do this. Those corporate event people especially, they do this over and over and over again. And same thing in our educational clients, right? We have a lot of universities that work with us. They're going to do commencement every year. If you can succeed at doing commencement, it's a huge lift. But those parents that paid $250,000 a year for that kid to cross that stage, if my stream goes down when Johnny crosses that stage, I assure you, Johnny that it cut out on is the trustee's kid, by the way. And then it's going to go up to the dean.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So like, I got to make sure that that's going right. And thus exactly too, belt and suspenders. And how can we make sure that this stuff is rock solid? I mean, I walk the show floor and I see some other IP solutions that are not bonded. And that just scares me.
Yeah. Me too. It scared me as well. But I love your analogy about broadcast and corporate too, because I started in broadcast as well, and I think one of my favorite analogies is in the broadcast world, right? When World News Tonight comes on, you'll never see it come up from black and there'll be an empty anchor chair. the anchor's always there, right? They're always there. It's it's a media in the corporate world. They'll be like lackadaisical sometimes. But listen, Troy, we want to thank you for coming. It has been great
Thanks,
to have
George.
you, man. Always fun to see you. Great conversation, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give it up for Troy. Woo! We got our first applause of the show. We
Yeah,
gotta love
first
it. But
applause of the day.
hey, listen, everybody, stay tuned for more. We're gonna have more shows, more events, more product demonstrations. We got Avid and Bird Dog and New Tech and others. Don't forget, we'll be here throughout the rest of NAB 2022. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.